The BiasGainLevel Modifier is used to adjust the relative scale of the upper and lower halves of the terrain height map. This is most useful for such terrain features as enhancing mountains or flattening lakes. As depicted in this bias graph, the bias upper stretches altitudes higher with increasing bias value, and the bias lower stretches altitudes lower with increasing bias value. The height map is typically centered before applying this modifier so that the height map center altitude is 50, allowing for the greatest bias range. The bias center controls determine the bias center altitude. This defaults to the middle altitude of the height map, such as 50. The bias lower controls are the amount of bias to apply to the height map values that are below the bias center value. This enhances or reduces the amount of lower elevations. The bias upper controls are the amount of bias to apply to the height map values that are above the bias center value. This enhances or reduces the amount of upper elevations. The gain controls are the gain strength of the bias values. Higher gain results in more bias. The level controls are the overall altitude elevation level of the height map. The OK button applies the modifier to the main terrain height map. The Cancel button cancels the dialog. The Copy button copies the current dialog values to the clipboard. The Paste button pastes the current dialog values from the clipboard. If the clipboard does not contain valid values, clicking this does nothing. The Reset button resets the dialog values to the values from the last time that it was opened in the current session. The Default button resets the dialog values to the application defaults.